All right. Hello everyone. My name is Rebecca. I'm from Stewards of the Coast and Redwoods as a program manager, and we are hosting the Art of Interpretation tonight, presented by David Berman, one of our favorite people. This is a really exciting presentation, and this is, of course, the virtual part. And we are hoping that some of you meet us in person for the training on Sunday, as well as joining some of our special tours, our school tours at Armstrong Redwoods. And then starting in the spring, of course, we do the tidal education as well. So we're going to be really focusing in on some great trainings for Armstrong Redwood docents. And this is just one of them. So if you have any questions or would like to join upcoming trainings, upcoming tours, feel free to contact us at Stewards. You can either give us a call or email us at any time. But we're really looking forward to this. Just to give a little introduction as far as interpretation goes, it's a great way to connect people through inspiration. So it's an interpretation that's from my experience and background in leading school tours and other fun educational programs. It's really great for you to be inspired yourself. So I encourage you all to keep learning, keep trying new experiences, and just feel comfortable with sharing your inspiration with others. So with further ado, we have David Berman.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm super excited to be here. And it's one of my favorite topics. And I see some very familiar faces and some people that I don't know that I'm excited to get to know you. And what I'm going to do is we'll have a slideshow, a Google presentation, and I'm going to share it with you. I'll put the link in chat. Actually, Rebecca and we can put the link later in chat. And that way you won't just, go away and just look at the slideshow without being here the whole time. But I will save some time at the end to talk about our Sunday walk at Armstrong Redwoods. I'll also save some time at the end to have some question and answer. And then throughout the sharing and the talk, I will pause and have some time to for some questions. If you have questions, you can also type them in chat, and Rebecca will be monitoring the chat. So with that, I'll go ahead and right. And while I have the slideshow sharing, I'm going to see if I can have a little panel on the side just so I can see everybody. Great. And somebody verbally, you can take yourself off mute and just let me know if you can see the presentation.
I see it, David, and I see up above the 4 or 5 pictures are off on the right. There's a little thing with 9 little boxes. That might give you more of our images.
Great.
But the slideshow is visible.
All right. So to start with, just a little bit of background about myself. I have been doing environmental education for this is my 40th year. I started back in 1983 teaching for LA County Outdoor Education Program after I graduated from college with a degree in recreation and camp administration. My background I have a Bachelor of Science, but I wasn't really trained as a biologist. And my background included being more of a wilderness guide. So I would lead backpack trips and rock climbing trips, spent a lot of time teaching and leading trips in Joshua Tree and Yosemite and the Sierras, and began my outdoor teaching work in the hills above Pasadena, outside of LA. Yes, there is nature outside of LA. And so that was my experience. And then I ended up working at a lot of camps, and did environmental education at a variety of places throughout California. I was the science camp director at Westminster Woods for about 16 years. I worked at a place called Ocean Song Farm and Wilderness Center off of Coleman Valley Road for about 8 years. And for the last 26 years, I was living at the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center as my home. I'm now living in Sebastopol. And I work as my 9-to-5 job. I work at Sonoma Water, the Sonoma County Water Agency, and I lead field trips teaching about water on the river. So we have an education center right outside of Forestville. And if you're interested in that, let me know and I can tell you more about that program. And I'm also on the board of Stewards of the Coast and Redwoods, and I worked as one of the first program manager at Stewards of the Coast and Redwoods for about 3 years, from 2012 to 2015, and spent a lot of time in Armstrong Redwoods. And I'm really excited about the folks that are here, and because we have an incredible community of educators and naturalists in this Zoom room. And so thank you for being here tonight. One of the things that comes up for me around the art of interpretation, and I'm going to explore this in a whole variety of ways. And I think one of the things that's important is that everybody has their own style. There are a lot of principles around interpretation, and people have a lot of opinions about, what is teaching, what is interpretation, and what is a naturalist, what is a docent. And so we're going to explore a whole variety of those things. But one of my favorite naturalists and educators is Joseph Cornell. And Joseph Cornell has a book called Sharing Nature with Children. How many of you have, or you kind of do a raise of hands, or how many of you have ever heard about Joseph Cornell or his book? And so he has this wonderful thing that is called flow learning. And flow learning is something that really resonated with me because it felt right. It was very simple, and it was really cool the way that flow learning just flowed. So in the spirit of flow, I'm going to show a short video from Salmon Creek School, right outside of Occidental. They have a observation deck on the creek. And in February, the kids can go out to this deck and look over into the creek. And this was one of the days we were out there. And I think the sound should be on. Let's try this. Here we go.
You think it swam up? That's what's amazing. I've seen them swim up this second fall right here. Like they get almost up and then they swim up.
Yeah, but they didn't come out of the water.
Oh! He went back down. Yeah. What a ride, huh?
There'll be a party on the mountain. People people dancing on a hill.
So the flow learning, that was a steelhead jumping up the waterfall at Salmon Creek School. And you can go there anytime. It's open to the public usually, and you can go and park in the little parking lot right to the right as you go in. And in February, it's a great place to watch salmon jumping the waterfall. And so the first step is awakening enthusiasm. And I think that video, Laurel Anderson was the educator with some kids there. And just to see a salmon jumping a waterfall and that excitement, that enthusiasm, I think however we can find a way to awaken participants' enthusiasm is a pretty cool thing. So that's the first step, awaken enthusiasm. The second part of flow learning is focusing attention. And this is a bobcat actually right off of Grayton Road, right near Occidental. And it just happened to be this moment when I was driving up the road and I turned and there was this bobcat looking right at me. And we stopped and spent a few minutes together and actually over 5-10 minutes watching each other. And it was pretty cool to watch this bobcat hunting and to just be close to a lynx and how incredible they are. And so that whole idea of how do we work with our participants and focus attention. When we're at Armstrong, the trees, and this is our exhibit, which many of you have seen right in the parking lot. But it's a great way for them to focus attention on the banana slug or to see something close up. And so that's the wonderful thing about interpretation panels or signs. There's so many ways to interpret something. And then direct experience. You know, how do we give participants direct experience with whatever we're doing? And so when you think about teaching, if you can have them touching the earth and picking up little redwood seeds, you can stop anywhere on the trail at Armstrong Redwoods and find 100 redwood seeds right below your feet. But we just walk right over them all the time and kind of forget. But how do we give others that direct experience? And this is a steelhead in the classroom program. Students raise steelhead trout and steelhead salmonids, and they release them back in the creek after 6 to 8 weeks. And this is a really fun time with them. This is a natural field quarter, UC Santa Cruz, with college students. Ken Norris was an instructor there for many years, and the students would just come back with just these amazing experiences and stories. And he used to say to his students, the object is the authority, that you're giving them direct experience. It's not you just telling them about it, but you're actually showing them and they get to experience it. And the last piece is this sharing inspiration. And I think that's something that we sometimes forget, that it's so important for each of us to share our own information, our own inspiration, not necessarily information, but our inspiration. And that it just keeps that sense of wonder going. And at some point, I'll stop and spend a little time sharing this video about, what inspires us. And so I spent a lot of time at Yosemite as a kid. I was very privileged to be able to go and my parents were from New York and moved out to Southern California. And we spent time camping with the Sierra Club. We spent a lot of time outdoors. And my parents, being from New York City, had a very different experience, and to spend time in the desert and the forest was something completely new. And I had a brother that I had to get a chance to share this a lot of these experiences with. On the right are two turkey vulture babies, and there was a little picture of them out at Ocean Song. They make a hissing sound, kind of like a rattlesnake when you disturb them. And the parents of the turkey vultures will throw up or vomit on you if you get too close to them. So I'm going to stop the sharing there just for a moment. And oh, it looks like we have some more people joining us. So those of you just joining us, if you can make sure to put your name in the chat, and also what city you're from, and if you're coming on Sunday. Put your name in the chat if you're coming on Sunday. And so I think, as we talk about interpretation, I know that there are a lot of naturalists and educators in the room. And what I'd like to do is we're just going to spend a couple minutes, and you can either raise your hand manually or verbally. Everybody doesn't have to share, but if a few people want to share, for you, what was one experience either in your youth or in your life that has really inspired you about being out in nature? What is one thing that just really, either it might have been a teacher or a specific experience? We're not going to get into 20-minute stories right now, but if you could share just what is a few people, what is something, either a teacher or something that has really awakened enthusiasm, inspired you? So go ahead, and a few people either want to raise their hand, and go ahead, Linda, and then yeah.
As a kid, I lived in Orinda, and we were free to wander everywhere, down to the creeks, up and find rattlesnakes every once, or not rattlesnakes, but snakes, and just play and play and play. And I fell in love with just being outside all day long.
Yeah, that freedom to explore.
Yeah.
Lisa, thank you. Lisa, and then Beth.
Okay, so I grew up like Linda, but I grew up at Mount Tim, and so I was in a redwood forest, and that was our playground. So really spent a lot of time just looking at a lot of things. But the person who definitely had the biggest impact on me was Elizabeth Terwilliger, because she worked with our schools a lot. And to this day, every time I walk by a hazel, I have to touch the leaves and say hello, feel her soft, warm, fuzzy gloves. So just, yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, Mrs. T, that's great elder in our community. Somebody else. Oh, Beth, go ahead.
So I also grew up in Los Angeles, and my mother was also from New York, and her idea of outdoors was the distance between the front door and the taxi cab. And so she wasn't too keen to take us to the outdoors, but I joined Girl Scouts, and we went on these amazing camping trips in Girl Scouts, and I was hooked.
Yay. Oh, that's exciting. So I'm going to keep moving, and I'll probably stop a couple times, just, people to share, and you can put things in chat also. Maybe somebody that inspired you or something that inspired you. So as we think about this, I'm going to go back to the slideshow. And we all have adventures. And for me, as we'd go up to the mountains and go up into the high country, this is Cathedral Lake, right near Tenaya Lake, up near Tioga Pass. And my brother and I, at a certain point, 18, 19 years old, went up for a 5-day backpack. We had never gone off by ourselves without our parents. And so we went off for 5 days. We, got our food and we were pretty excited. We stopped at the gas station right at Tioga Road, right past the main entrance to Yosemite. And there was a truck that had been broken into by a bear. And there was an interpretation sign. There was a sign up. And that sign told you how to hang your food with a rope over a branch. And when you're in the backcountry, this is before bear cans. So there weren't really any bear cans. And so we, read about it a little bit, and then we headed up. And our first night, we ended up at this little confluence of 2 creeks. That's my brother. And there on the right, those are our 2 sleeping bags stuffed with food. And we hung our food about 12 feet up in the tree, just like they told us. And we put a rope up and we pushed it up with a little loop so we could get it back down. The thing is that if you look closely, our sleeping bags and our backpack are right under the tree. And we were sleeping under the tree where the food was, which wasn't a really smart idea. And so around 9 o'clock at night, right in front of us, our heads were like right near where the little baby tree, where the trees are leaning against the big tree. And we heard a crunch about 6 inches from our head. And there were these 2 bear cubs. And it was dark at this time. And they ran right up the tree. And we looked up, and there was Mama Bear. And Mama Bear was literally like 10 feet above our heads and let out this roar. And we were like, oh no. And so we built a fire right under the tree, which wasn't really smart. And then we decided this isn't going to work. So we took our sleeping bags, went about 40 feet away. We ended up listening to bear go through all of our stuff. And about probably midnight, we saw the bear walking towards us. And we were trying to think, would you run or would you play dead? And we were kept, like, oh, what are we going to do? So we decided to play dead. And the bear came right up and started sniffing us. And we were really still. And I took this picture when the bear was up in the tree right at that first moment. And I thought, well, the flash would maybe scare the bear. And we had a knife, and we thought maybe the knife would help, but that was kind of ridiculous for some older teenagers. And the bear ended up walking around us. It ended up going through our stuff for a few more hours. And it was this whole experience around just being with these incredible big mammals, and how we, I don't know, just how you take things for granted when you're out there. The art of interpretation, includes more than just how we interact with people verbally or leading people on walks. There are a lot of interpretation signs and a lot of places where you can get to know a place more. And it's a great way to, think about how do we express what's important in our community. And there's so many stories about place. And so on the right, we have Bodega Head and Bodega Bay, the San Andreas Fault, the hole in the head where the nuclear power plant was going to be built, the stories of earthquakes and the 1906 earthquake down in Point Reyes, just a few miles from here, and so many stories that are attached to a place. And so on Sunday, when we go out, we're going to do a whole variety of activities. And sometimes activities can get in the way of learning about nature. and you can actually do at times too many games or too many activities that distracts from what's right in front of you. And so one of the questions that comes up for docents and educators is, how many props or gimmicks or games do you play? And it's a really important question around just being, for instance, with the redwood trees. Sometimes walking quietly for 5 minutes in silence can be the most special, wonderful thing for anybody, for any age. And so these are some of the activities we'll be doing on Sunday, including maybe a few songs. I mentioned a few people that this slideshow we will make available to you. We'll put the link in chat and we'll email the link to you. But there are a lot of links and websites. One of them is this program called Beatles, which is Better Environmental Education, Teaching and Learning, and sharing our expertise. And this is a wonderful program put together through the Lawrence Hall of Science and some incredible people that have worked for many years in the field of environmental education. John Muir Laws, who does nature journaling, is a part of this curriculum and program. And this I Notice, I Wonder, and it reminds me of, there's some wonderful lesson plans and resources for teachers and for just being outdoors. It's one of the best resources for docents, I think, that there is. One of my favorite activities is this activity of what is it? And so when you pick up a stick, and we'll do this on Sunday, you just look at what is it? And there's so many things. This is a stick, but if you take a moment, just quietly think about what else is this stick? And so unmute yourself and maybe 4 or 5 people just share one thing that you think this is.
It's a tool.
A tool. Thank you.
Habitat.
Great.
Turkey vulture nest.
Yes.
A fuzzy sword.
Fuzzy sword. That's a good one. Anybody else? Couple more. So
It's
with this,
it's food for somebody.
ooh, food for somebody. Good. And so all of those things, what's really great at this is there's no real right or wrong answer. And so, and I think everybody said something that can be taken, and it's what you notice. And so it could be, somebody could call it lichen, somebody could call it green, somebody could call it, like somebody said, it's has texture. It's food, it's habitat. And so I think thinking of open-ended questions and questions where it doesn't have to be right or wrong. One of the experiences that I had was at the Bodega Marine Lab, and we would take kids there, and we take little kids, first, second graders, third graders. And when we go, years ago, you got to go in the Bodega Marine Lab and look at these tanks. And they had these rooms full of all kinds of tidal organisms. And a docent was teaching one day and said to the kids, wow, what do you think these are? And the student, this little second, third grader said, oh, wow, look, it's a starfish. And the docent said, no, that is not a starfish. That is a sea star. And the look on this kid's face was like, total rejection. He was so enthusiastic, so full of wonder. And just to that student, that little kid, it was a starfish. And this is a term that I like to use called blocking. I don't like using it, but that sometimes people get real excited about something, and it doesn't have to be about the name. And any common name that we use, there are, so many common names to everything. It's as much of a star, or it's as much as a fish as it is a star. And the sad part, to this day, this was 25 years ago that that this happened with this docent. Well, about 6 months ago, I went to the Bodega Marine Lab, and I was with a docent tour, and the same thing happened. And I was like, no! And it was so sad, because it was just like, it's how we pass down our teaching. And so one thing to be aware of is if somebody sees a bird way up in the tree and says, oh, it's a bluebird, but you go, no, that's a stellar jay. Just think about how we respond and how we dampen somebody's enthusiasm. Or how do you share and awaken enthusiasm, and just being able to share with each other in a different way. And so I do teach at the river, and we look at things under a microscope. We go and collect aquatic macroinvertebrates. And this kid came up, he was a 6th grader, and he came up and said, hey, David, look, I found a damn selfie. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, look, I found this damn selfie. And I was like, I couldn't figure out what he was saying. And then I realized, as I looked at the word damselfly, that if you look at it, it's like, oh yeah, it's a damn selfie. It's just like, and so it just, I don't know, it just made me laugh that we all see things in different ways. And these beautiful damselflies can be damn selfies to some people. And then sometimes we look at things and we like, what the heck is this? And what are you showing me? And I don't even believe what you're showing me. And this is one of my favorite interpretation signs. And we all drive by it at least many, many times throughout the year. There are actually, if you look at this, I want you to think about, what is this? If you're looking at this picture, what is it? And I'll give you one little hint without giving it away. There are 27,000 of them that are bundled together. 27,000, which is pretty crazy. And it has to do with this structure here that was built in 1937. And over on the right, the San Francisco side, there's right over here where the toll plaza used to be. There's a little interpretation display about the Golden Gate Bridge. And if you look over to the right there, this over here to the right are the wires in each of the cables that holds up the Golden Gate Bridge. 27,000 cables in that kind of structure that holds up Golden Gate Bridge. And it's really cool. I love some of the numbers in here. Some people are into numbers, some people aren't, but 80,000 miles of wire used, which is pretty cool. And I just love the cumulative, maybe it's not quite the way you would use the word cumulative impact, but it's the culmination of many things together. So a few other things that I wanted to share about interpretation. For educators that are teaching, a number of years ago, we, in the science standards in schools, we developed the next generation science standards. These are taught now in all the schools to some degree or another. What's cool is that scientists came together from all over to develop and think about, what do scientists do? What do scientists know? And what scientists think about? And it's all focused and centered around phenomena. And so what's really cool is it's all about asking questions. So it's not about having kids raise their hand and give you the answer, but how do we ask questions? Analyzing, interpreting data. How do we, this is a cool number 7, how do we engage in argument, which I thought is really cool. And you can dive deeper into this. And I think I'll try to use some of this language as we go out on Sunday, just thinking about patterns. And one of the favorite things I like doing with any age, whether it's kids or adults, is thinking about pattern recognition. How do you recognize patterns in the landscape? Scale and proportion, cause and effect. What's really exciting right now in education is systems and system models and system theory. Talking about concepts like energy flows and cycles. Rocky Roeder was an educator at Sonoma State University and a wonderful teacher. And he used to share this wonderful quote about nature as teacher. My school, the earth, my teachers, the sky, the clouds, the sun, the moon, the trees. Sometimes letting nature be the teacher and getting out of the way is a wonderful way to be a docent, to kind of disappear and let nature do the teaching. And then David Sobel, probably one of my favorite educators, and he teaches at Antioch University on the East Coast, Antioch College, and he wrote a book called Place-Based Education, which is incredible. One of my favorite books called Beyond Ecophobia. I was just at a school in Santa Rosa, and the teachers were asking, like, what do you want your students to get out of an experience in nature? And the teachers were saying, you know, so many of our kids grow up here in the city and don't get outside a lot, and they become scared of nature. And we tend to plant those seeds. When you go outside, you know, as I'm a parent, but as parents, it's like, watch out for the poison oak, watch out for the singing nettle. There are yellow jackets, there are ticks, don't go in the grass. And so that Beyond Ecophobia is a wonderful book. And David Sobel also has some wonderful books around map making with children, which is pretty cool. And then it's just around perspective. If you go to the Laguna Foundation, the Laguna Trail right off of Highway 12, I love these 2 trees. And so the tree that we're looking at actually is 2 trees. I'm just looking at it with the camera from a certain angle. And you've probably all seen this tree, or these trees. I keep getting that mixed up. And so if you step to the side, this is the same picture, but the trees are just lined up. And so this is looking west. This is looking a little to the west from a different angle. The north, maybe a little bit. And so anyway, it's just perspective, I think, is so important as we go outside and are with people. David Suzuki, one of my favorite authors and activists up in Canada, has a book called You Are the Earth. And there's so much work with First Nations and the indigenous folks up there, and remembering that we are the earth, that we're not separate or apart from nature, that we are nature. And that becomes really important as a docent or as an educator. And then there are some very traditional organizations, the National Association of Interpretation, NAI. They have a really great interpretive guide certification. There's a a acronym called TOR, thematic, organized, relevant, enjoyable. And they have some incredible tools, and educators and people from all over the world come and are trained in interpretation. You're not all the people are professionals. There are many people that are just really curious, and docents and naturalists of all different from all different areas. Another educator that has done some incredible work around the world is Steve Van Meter, called Earth Education. And years ago, this was really popular instead of teaching, when we go into the forest or wherever we are and teaching, instead of teaching a bird class or a mushroom class or geology, or everything's kind of separate, that Steve began this wonderful little acronym called ECDCICA, and it just stuck in your head, ECDCICA. And it had to do with energy flow, cycles, diversity, community, interrelationships, change, and adaptation. And I think one of the, when we think about or talk about interpretation, Freeman Tilden is one of the Tilden Park in Oakland, and had a lot of principles around interpretation. Some of them I like, and some of them are up for interpretation. I guess that was not a play on words, but I guess it was. Well, number 4 was always a fun one for me. The chief aim of interpretation is not instruction, but provocation. And so I'm not sure, you could take that a little far if you talk about just provoking people. I know that's not completely what he meant, but there are some really good things around how we focus on it. But it's a very, as you can tell, Freeman Tilden was from a different time when he talked about man. He didn't quite have inclusive, it wasn't just about all humans or women, it was about man. And then in just a moment, I'll stop my kind of diatribe or monologue on resources and different things. But again, one of my favorite educators and teachers is Dr. Art's Guide to Planet Earth. And Dr. Art lives in California, and was part of an organization called West Ed. And what I really liked about Dr. Art is energy flows, matter cycles, and life webs. And if you think about how simple that is, that energy from the sun and energy flows through the system, and matter cycles, whether it's the water cycle, the nutrient cycle, the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, that matter is constantly cycling, and life webs, that there's so many different ways that there are so many complexities and networks. And so I love how he frames how we talk about the outdoors and nature. Keeps it very simple. And Dr. Art also has some great things on climate change and the carbon cycle. And this is his book, A Guide to Planet Earth. So I'm going to stop for just a moment. I know I've been kind of going on and on and on and on, but that as we think about being outside and being a docent or being a teacher or sharing, we all go out in different ways. And so when we go out on Sunday and are in person and really experiencing and doing interpretation, we all have different styles, and it depends on the place where you are. A number of folks in this room have led walks at Armstrong Redwoods, and to be in the parking lot and greeting 50 kids or 50 adults and then leading them on the trail, and there are hundreds of people walking by you, it can be really distracting. And so how do you do that? How do you keep a group together? The group management is probably one of the most challenging things. And so we'll touch a little bit on group management. Part of what we'll do on Sunday also is we would hope that maybe some of you might be become docents and come and volunteer at Stewards, and we will be recruiting you heavily on Sunday. And we have a number of folks that just love leading walks, and it could be with students or kids, or maybe on a weekend you want to come out and just lead 2 or 3 people. And so, but there's no heavy coercion or anything. But we do, what'll be fun is being able to just think about whether you're going on a walk with your family or friends, or you're leading a group, building your own toolbox, whether you have anything with you or not. I find that the older I get, the less I bring with me. And it's something that just being aware of, sometimes really deeply having nature be the teacher and getting out of the way becomes the most special thing. So at the end of the day, sometimes I really don't want the students or parents or kids or saying, what was your favorite part? Oh, it was David. It was like, no, it was the redwood trees. It was the bobcat we saw. It was the banana slug. And so that's something to think about as we bring people into the outdoors. And I'll share a few other life experiences in the that I have with some of the pictures that I'm going to show you in a moment. But that becomes really significant in how we interpret, is sometimes not having too much. And the redwoods, oh my gosh, the redwoods are just, there's some places you really don't have to say a lot. I mean, you really could walk down the Pioneer Trail. I think, is that what it's called? Somebody nod. Is that right, Mike? Others, Rebecca? Yeah. You can walk down the main trail and just walk quietly and find teachable moments along the way. And by a teachable moment, I might be you all of a sudden come across a banana slug, and there's this moment where you have a chance to share and teach. Today I was at the fish viewing gallery, where we can watch fish going through the fish ladder under the river. I tell the students we're going to go under the river, but we're not going to get wet. And we went through the fish viewing gallery. The Chinook king salmon aren't spawning, running right now. We got to wait for the rains, but we were down there and we found there was a spider, and I didn't see it at first, but the students, they said, oh, we should kill it. And they stopped for a moment, and there was a parent there, and it's just like, wait. And so instead we stopped and we just started to notice this beautiful black spider. And then the parent, the chaperone that was with me, the dad, this one young girl, and we started to look at it, and we noticed it had this red spot on its belly. And this was a beautiful black widow. And then we were trying to figure out, okay, so how do I get this black widow and pick it up and bring it outside of this cement viewing gallery? And so we spent the next 5-10 minutes trying to catch this black widow without being, bitten by it. And it became this teachable moment. And then it was afterwards, it was like, oh, where did you put it? You know, where did it go? You know, and anyway, it was just kind of this moment. So I like to talk a lot about teachable moments. All right. So we're gonna before we move on, I said I would stop a couple times. Any questions? Any questions about what we've covered so far? Any questions? And we'll have time at the very end for topics. Mike, go ahead.
David, not a question, but I want to let folks know that we do have a docent library at Armstrong Redwoods, and that includes sharing nature with children and also beyond ecophobia. So if you actually become a docent, you can check out those books.
Great, thank you. And I think also that on Sunday, we're gonna, and I think I'll try to email everybody this map. I'll put a link in the chat. I got to remember this, Rebecca, help me remember. This is the Armstrong map, and it has some great information, but what I really like about it is it's a chance to get to know place. And so whenever you're leading a group, it's really important to know the place before you lead the group there. I've been going up to the Founders Grove in Humboldt County and leading some folks, international folks. They're mostly from China, and I realized, you know, I didn't know the Founders Grove really well, and I didn't want to get people lost. And so we went up and we're exploring, and but I had to go really far out of the way to get to, you know, to really explore the place ahead of time. And so just being aware of where you are and where you're leading somebody, and who was Colonel Armstrong, and what lands are we on? And so here in Sebastopol, what's really important for me in being a new person to this community in this place is knowing that, you know, for the last 10,000 years or more, that the Federated Indians of the Great Rancheria, the Southern Pomo, this was their land. This is their home for over 10,000 years. And their shell middens are here and they live here. And so working with our local tribes and indigenous people, it's really important to know the Kashaya, and their place and their home. This Saturday, there's going to be a dance up on the coast that we can share a little bit about on Saturday. I don't know if it's full or not. I think they're only having like 200 people come. But on the coast, there are going to be some Pomo dancers. And so knowing the native voices, I was just with a school from Petaluma, and I was sharing with the students, you know, our local tribal folks that live here in our community. And one of the kids from the school said, there are Indians that still live here. And I was like, wow. I was like, I realized that he was very sincere in what he asked. And as settlers, or as, you know, colonizers of this place, you know, and so I was like, yeah, and they even go to your school. And so I think it's important to have and be able to share about native voices. And that's why it's important to do a land acknowledgement and to acknowledge the peoples of the place where you're teaching. And so we'll bring that up on Sunday when we go to Armstrong. And, you know, how do we really honor our local native tribes and people that live in our community and are here, and not talk about them in the past tense, but honor the indigenous folks of where we live. All right, here we go. We're gonna do a push in the next 15 minutes or so, and then we'll have some time for questions. So part of my story in living in Occidental for so many years, not that many years, but is the salmon story. And so when I was at Westminster Woods, which is down off Dutchville Creek, I began to have a relationship with salmon. And what started it was in 2001, about 4 or 5 years after living in the watershed. Well, I'd lived there about 10, 15 years. But we were down in the creek one day, and there are a bunch of links on this page, but I'm going to pass over that. Uh-oh, I can't get to the next slide. Oh no. Oh, there it is. All right, there we go. And so I was down in the creek. This is my son, Ezra, 21 years ago. And we were in the creek, and actually swimming around my feet, right where I am, were 4 to 5 coho salmon. And we didn't even know they were coho. Brock Dolman and I, who runs the Water Institute at the Arts and Ecology Center, we were down there looking at these fish, not sure quite who they were. And we ended up talking to a bunch of locals who said there never were salmon in the creek. There might have been steelhead. And I'm going to try to show this video for just a moment.
And here they come, swimming back up together. Ooh, 2 males, definitely figuring out who's who. There's a picture of the 4 of them. 1 in front, 2 behind. 2 males, 1 female, maybe? No, ooh. Whoa.
So there is 1 female, about 4 males. So that experience with those salmon, this was December 21st, 2001. The salmon, the coho salmon, have been listed as an endangered species. And they've been spending millions and billions of dollars on a broodstock program to help these were some of the last salmon in the Russian River watershed. Since then, they've had a really successful broodstock program in terms of reintroducing wild salmon back into the creeks. And I can share a little more about that. There are steelhead that come up Fife Creek up into Armstrong Redwoods, which is pretty cool. I wanted to go back though to interpretation, and this is one of my favorite artists, Ray Troll. And you might have seen some of his t-shirts and posters. And Ray lives up in Washington and has some incredible art. And you could call him an interpreter in his own way. In Camp Meeker, one day somebody gave me a call and said there was a dead fish in the creek. And this fish was in like 3-4 inches of water. And when I went up to this fish, I really did think it was dead. And I had these rubber boots on, and I kind of nudged it. It jumped up into the air and started to try to swim upstream. The problem was that here in Camp Meeker, they had a summer dam, and there's the fish in the sheet flow of water, and the fish couldn't make it up the channel. And basically that was 25 years ago. And since then, there's been a lot of restoration. They took the dam out. Camp Meeker lost their swimming hole, which they had for 100 years. But they did a lot of restoration for the salmon. And now on the right, there's the willows, and you can see that there's more complexity in the creek. And this is what it looks like a little bit today, and these are kids releasing steelhead back in the creek, and you can see there's deeper pools. for them. This was the same place that salmon, that steelhead was. And so it's incredible how a community can come together and change a place and habitat. There's a wonderful program called Students and Teachers Restoring a Watershed. And in fact, right in the middle of this picture, this guy right here, John Brody, works for Straw. And the Straw program started with a group of fourth graders in Marin County, and the teacher asking the kids, maybe we could, what could we do to help endangered species? And so they began to help a freshwater shrimp that was endangered, and ended up raising over $100,000 and doing all this restoration and starting this program called Straw. And I think this woman named Laurel Rogers, Lorette Rogers, still is a founder of that program. For me, one of the ways of interpretation has been photography and taking pictures and slowing down. This was a great blue heron, actually in the Merced River, right outside the entrance of Yosemite. But just being aware of what's around us and reflecting on where we are in the environment. Whenever we work with students or whoever we're with in the outdoors, you know, what is our goal? What are we trying to do? And sometimes we are teachers. We're actually giving direct instruction. So I teach for the water agency. We teach school kids that are learning about science and learning about specific things about ecology and the ecosystem. And so, you know, what is your goal? Or is it just to go exploring, to be on an adventure? And we learn things in different ways. And so this is Mount Shasta, and it's this incredible mountain that we drive by and we see from different places throughout, you know, the state. And just to be, kind of put yourself in a place that really inspires you. You know, where would you like to go? What would you like to do? And I think what's exciting about just being inspired, it just comes in so many different ways. There's a wonderful song. I know this sounds really silly, but Monty Python, Eric Idle wrote a song called Expanding Universe. I think it's sometimes called the Galaxy Song, but it's all about perspective and galaxies, and that if we're really still right now, we're really still, and all of a sudden we think that we're this little planet in a solar system, in a galaxy that we call the Milky Way, and that we're one of billions and millions of other galaxies. And when they took this picture of the Hubble telescope, this is way before James Webb, they pointed the telescope to this little tiny spot in the dark sky. And when they pointed the telescope in this little dark spot in the sky, and they left it there, and they came back with this deep field picture of millions. Each of those dots that you see are actually galaxies. They're not stars. They're millions and millions and billions of stars within galaxies, which is just a whole cool perspective. And I think that's the cool thing about being with, having a sense of wonder and being outside with kids. So I'll kind of end part of this with one of my favorite teachers, Angeles Arian, has this little thing with the fourfold way. And I love this very simple, it's kind of like Joseph Cornell's flow learning. This one is another way to just show up. But it's, the first one is showing up. Showing up is, you know, you can't really do a whole lot if you don't show up. This picture that I took here was an accidental. It was this beautiful little tree and it was sunrise. And I was taking this sunrise picture and then this hummingbird flew into the picture. So I really was not taking a picture of the hummingbird. I was taking a picture of the sunrise and then the hummingbird came in and kind of photobombed the picture. But it's just being able to show up. And then in the words of Mary Oliver, a wonderful poet, showing up and then paying attention. And I love this quote around to pay attention is our endless and proper work. And it's this idea of just really paying attention. This picture was actually taken at the mouth of the Russian River in Jenner. And I was sitting in this little wooden bench that's right at one of the little pullouts. Some of you might have sat there before. And it's right overlooking the north part of Goat Rock Beach. And I looked up, and right as I was looking up, there was an osprey flying over, and I had my camera in my hand, and I just put it up and started taking pictures, just check really fast. And I didn't realize it looked like it had something in its talons, but not until I went home and I looked at the picture did I see that there was this incredible, it's called an American shad, and it's a fish. I know the fish wasn't really happy, but it was just this moment where you're all of a sudden you're paying attention. This is just a fun picture. Somebody from Humboldt sent this, and it's a wildlife camera picture, and it's this mountain lion stalking a deer. I always wonder, I was like, did somebody Photoshop this? But it's pretty incredible. I don't think it was Photoshopped. It was actually, I think, a wildlife camera that was taken. But it always makes me think about, wow, mountain lions are really stealth creatures. Today, as we were walking along the river, one of the students said, are there mountain lions out here? And they were a little scared of whether a mountain lion was going to come eat us. I told them I had been there 30 years and I had never even seen one. And I think also for me, when I think about interpretation, it comes in many ways. And I think Greta is a good an example of just speaking the truth. Sometimes being really honest and speaking the truth is really important. And so this is the third one of that fourfold way. There's showing up, pay attention, speak the truth. And even if it gets people a little upset or a lot upset, speaking the truth becomes really important. And Jane Goodall, I think, put it well with the greatest danger to our future is apathy, or sometimes not doing or saying something. Does anybody know where this picture is? What is this a picture of? How many people have been here? Anybody want to come off mute and tell us where we are?
Hetchy.
Yes, that's Hetchy. And it's pretty incredible. Most of you have probably seen the pictures before and after. And it's beautiful. I mean, it's an amazing reservoir. But it also used to be a beautiful valley. And I love this picture. I was doing a presentation at Safari West, and I was looking for pictures of the kids out on the trail. And some of you are really going to laugh at this picture, because those of you that are docents are going to look at this picture and like, here's a wild group of middle school kids. And they really wanted their picture taken. I'm not sure if I took this or not, or I probably shouldn't say I took it. But the funny part is that they're sitting on the other side of the fence. And they all went and really wanted to take a picture together. And so sometimes I just laugh at this picture because they're having a good time. They're being really cool, like middle school adolescents. And they're doing something that in some ways we should or shouldn't do. But it's pretty fun. Colonel Armstrong tree, 1,400 years old. probably older now, that this maybe was 10 or 20 years ago. And so showing up, paying attention, speaking the truth, and then the last one is being open to the outcome. And if you look through this video, I mean, these slides, there are a couple of videos. This is one of my favorite ones over here on the right. And January 15th, Little Pond, Coleman Valley Road, 5 otters swimming. So this is on Coleman Valley Road. It's about a mile up, right at the turn before you get to Willow Creek Road. Somebody gave me a call and said they saw some river otter. And so I went and spent about an hour. There's a river otter. You can't quite see it real well right here, but it's eating a perch that it caught in the pond. But the best part of this video, I'm not going to show the whole thing. The best part, besides it crunching on the fish, is that the otters started to crawl out of the pond and started to preen and play. And this was just this incredible moment. I had never quite seen river otters be just so playful with each other. And they're doing this all the time. So many places along the river. Okay, now how to get out of the video. All right, I'm back. Hold on. Okay, give me a moment. I'm going to wrap up in a few minutes, and then we're going to have some time for questions. So a few years ago, let's see, I'm just going to leave this. I ended up taking a week-long certification forest therapy, which is a program called Shinrin Yoku. It's and forest therapy, it's a little different than being a docent. It's a different type of interpretation. It's not really being an educator. It's more of giving people an invitation to let the forest be the therapist, and to let people really heal and finding their own experience. And there's a whole wonderful world of forest therapy. The other piece to the art of interpretation is how we share inspiration and how we circle up, and how we come together. And sometimes with the younger kids, it's playing in nature and finding ways to be very colorful interpreters. This was a experience with students where we built a cob bench together. And when you have time to really build something together, it builds community. This is all mud and straw and natural pigments, which was pretty cool. And this is us celebrating that. Those of you that work at Armstrong Redwoods, the guy in the red hat is Scott Lawyer, back when he was a naturalist at Westminster Woods, who's the operations maintenance person at Stewards. And then there's a wonderful way of exploring interpretation through what's called a Council of All Beings, which is where people make masks and they take on a animal and pretend to be that animal. and then speak for that animal. And so there are kids and adults, and we're doing a council of all beings. And this is a wonderful quote from Thomas Berry that I really like, called "To reinvent ourselves on the species level will require great wisdom." I think a lot of times for kids or people of all ages, we sometimes forget that we're animals and that we're not we're not on the planet as another species, but we tend to be more anthropocentric, very human-centered. So I think being outdoors and being a little less human-centered can be a great way to kind of walk with other people. And I just love when I'm at, whether you're out in the ocean or in nature, you have these moments that are like, wow. And being in a pod of dolphins, with a pod of dolphins, this is on the way to Catalina, or being in the forest and seeing a banana slug, just having those teachable moments. All right. So hopefully I didn't put you all to sleep. Do you have any other, what I thought we'd do is wrap up with some questions, comments, and a little bit about Sunday. I did want to mention, I'll be out there. Rebecca and I are going to get out there early on Sunday the 17th. We'll be out there definitely by 9:30. We're going to leave at 10 o'clock, so we're going to try to start on time. Try to arrive a little early and park, use the bathroom, and we're going to meet at the visitor center. So we'll be at the visitor center, the front of Armstrong Redwoods. If you can arrive by 9:45, just to kind of get ready, and then we'll gather by the picnic tables in the visitor center area. And then we're going to walk down the trail towards the picnic area. It's going to be very slow. We'll pull off with our group. We're probably expecting anywhere from, probably around 25 to 30 people coming, even though we have, I think, 35 to 40 signed up. No, I think we have about 30 people that have confirmed, something around that. And so any questions either about Sunday, about what we'll be doing, about anything from tonight? And if you want to make a comment, raise your hand. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, Rebecca, will people need to pay for parking?
No, I don't think for training. I don't think so.
So
Yeah,
let people know.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And let's see. Yeah, because the turnoff is it's right before the kiosk, isn't it? To park.
Yeah.
So yeah, so and I'm not sure if I'll check with when you check in, we'll have a sign-in sheet and we'll make sure. I don't think the ranger goes around, but maybe they do.
I can make a temporary parking. I can check in with making some like temporary parking passes we can hand out to people as you show up.
Great.
I think that would be acceptable.
I don't
Great.
think they ever check anyway.
I don't think they ever check, but there's actually an Iron Ranger now inside the parking lot.
Oh, great.
But if you want to pay, but we paid for this class, right?
No,
this
is free.
It was free, so it's a donation to Stewards.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, if you want. So other comments or questions, questions about any topics or what we covered. And Rebecca, is it possible to put the link in the chat? Could we put that for the, I think the link that I shared with you is shareable.
Yeah, I can do that. And then just one more thing before I forget. I will also bring the brochures for Armstrong.
Oh, great. Thank you.
No problem.
And thank you people for, thank you everybody for just putting in some of the things that, of the teachers and the people that inspired you. And I think that that's something that as we teach our kids, our families, our friends, just those deep connections and a love for nature, and how do we inspire each other in a way that, you know, in just a meaningful way. And I think that that's something that as we go out on Sunday, I hope that it'll be a time to really just, what I've found is just having a community of learning becomes really important. On a side note, Megan Waller-Murphy and I will be doing a 8-day naturalist intensive training at the Bodega Marine Lab. And so we'll check the Stewards website and there'll be information about that. And we'll be posting that. It's a little different than the regular naturalist class. It's over 10 weeks. We'll still be doing that one in February. So we'll do a 10-week course where it's just California natural history. A few of you here have taken that. And then, but this one will be a little special where you actually will stay at the Bodega Marine Lab for 8 days, which will be quite a lot.
Hey, Rebecca, that link's not working. That link's not a link.
Oh, okay. Let's try it again.
Yeah, it's not going, it doesn't go anywhere. I think
Actually-
it's from somebody's hard drive instead of an actual web address.
Yeah.
Hold on a sec. I'll get it.
Is it a Google link or is it a YouTube link?
It's a Google Slides.
Yeah, but it's, you have access to it. It's not a, I'm going to make sure it's shareable.
Thank you.
There we go. So anybody with the link can view it. And then if you want to download it, you can download it. Any other questions or comments? Somebody, Kathy, thank you for mentioning that. Kathy,
You're
maybe
welcome.
see if you can get to this one.
I got it.
Yep,
Okay, good. Okay.
it's there.
And then that,
question.
yeah, go ahead. Is it Leah or Leah?
Yeah, it's Leah.
Leah.
I've worked with older teenagers quite a bit. I haven't worked with younger kids, so I'm interested in, I mean, I get that you don't really dumb it down, but you change your approach with younger kids. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about working with different age groups.
Yeah, thank you. That's really good. And that's a great question. And make sure that I talk about it or bring that up on Sunday. But one of the things that I know my kid taught me very quickly is not to use like baby talk to like fifth, 5 or 6 year olds or 7-year-olds. You don't want to necessarily either dumb it down or talk to them like little babies. Everybody wants to be kind of respected, does want to be respected. And so you can be real and you can, it's interesting, like the language and words that we use. So to be real intentional with that. And whether I'm working with really young kids or teenagers or adults, that's why I like, what do you notice? What do you wonder about? And not always naming it right away. And so some of the educators, where you don't have to name things, but there are some very specific things. I find that teenagers can be, in their own way that can be challenging, but I love working with teenagers and middle school and high school. But you really have to just be yourself and not try to, please or be too preachy or self-righteous with it. So it's a really good point. And I think that there are some strategies that work. or don't work. And making sure to, how do you awaken enthusiasm with a 16-year-old versus a 5-year-old? So good, really good question. Thanks for bringing it up. And we'll try to address it on Sunday in more of a experiential way. And I think that gets to, you're not just reading the landscape, you're reading your group. And there are a bunch of things around that, around, safety and all those other things. One of the things I'll never forget is we were doing a 4 or 5 day residential program, and one of the kids, was the 6th grader, we found out knew every single bird that was anywhere near us and that even made any sound or noise. And his grandfather would take him birding, and they were birders, and they would sign up, they did the rare bird alert, and they traveled everywhere exploring birds. And this 6th grader, this 12-year-old, took our whole group on a bird walk. And it was just incredible to be led by younger kids that just knew a lot. And so you have to really kind of be a kid yourself and be open to having a beginner's mind. So thank you. Any other questions before we wrap up? And I'll be on for, go ahead, Linda.
I want to make a comment. I can't be there on Sunday, but I work with the little ones, and one of the people that helped train me was so fun with them. And she didn't know a name of something, she asked the children to name it. And at the end, they would remember that name. Even if I knew what the other name was, they would remember that name, and they could describe what it was. And so the prickly purple plant or whatever it was, So that's really, it was sequoia, and she was so fun in the forest. Yeah. I don't know if anyone else ever worked with her, but I really enjoyed her. Thank you. And I wish I could be there, but I cannot. Thank you, David, so much. And David's an excellent person to learn from. I took his training 2 years in a row. I liked it so much. So enjoy.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, I love that. I love that about, kids coming up with their own names and making it personal, making it mean something. That's great. That's really cool. Yeah, Beth.
So in February, I took a bunch of Japanese college students out to Armstrong, and we did the climate study, the Save the Redwood League, where you measure the height of the tree and you figure out how much carbon they sequester. And then at the end of the week, the Japanese people had to give a speech. And this guy who was an engineering student said, I didn't know that trees could help with carbon capture. And I'm going back to Japan, and I'm going to, tell everybody that this is how we're going to solve climate change. And I just thought, oh man, we did it. I changed somebody. So doing this work and showing people the forest and whatever you do, it's so satisfying when you can actually see that you change somebody's mind. And so anyways, that's why I do it.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you everybody for tonight. Really appreciate it. I'll be on for a couple minutes, and we'll see some of you on Sunday, and feel free. I think my email's in there. And we'll probably bring some watershed maps Sunday. And thanks for being part of the whole thing. Thank you, Kirsten. And appreciate everybody being here. Thanks for showing up.
Thanks, David. This was great.
Thank you, David.
Sure.
Thank you,
Thank
David.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Hi, Nina. Thank you for being here. And Linda Price. Wow. Look at that. Everybody's disappearing. Thanks, Nina. Nina's actually out in the woods somewhere.
I guess I'll stop the recording now.
Yay. Hey, that was good.